We had actually a very good first year in this trial. It is a multi-year trial. The pasture production between the farmlets has been very similar, so that was a surprise given the different levels of nitrogen fertilizer we apply on them. On the cow production side, whilst the individual cow production was about the same for all farmlets, one farmlet has less cows, so automatically you then get less milk per hectare on a farmlet with less cows per hectare. The pasture composition that we have planned for these farmlets, we have a different mix for certain farmlets. We expect nitrogen to also have an influence. What we have found that in the farmlets that have perennial ryegrass and clover and one of them plantain, the differences are not that large so far. Plantain, we were hoping to have a large amount, 25–30% in one of the farmlets, but plantain seems to be struggling to survive in high producing farmlets. That's our first impression. So over time we found in our farmlets that changes occur just due to the season and to how pastures grow. Differences we see is mostly only for farmlet 4, which is a multi-species mix with different clovers and different grass species. That's where we see the biggest change, and that's also the farmlet with the biggest difference to other farmlets. So farmlet 1, 2 and 3, who all three get certain levels, be it different, of nitrogen fertilizer in botanic composition, so in the pasture species don't differ as much, other than one of them still has some level of plantain in it. The biggest standout probably is that the amount of clover ended up being higher than we anticipated, and the amount of clover that we have is probably very important in the results that we achieve, but that has to be confirmed over the next 2 years. We see small differences depending on the level of nitrogen fertilizer that goes on. So one farmlet, the conventional one, what could say, receives up to 300 kilo nitrogen per hectare per year. Response as we would be expecting. It's growing well and the pastures behave as we expect. Then we have two farmlets that get half the rate, a maximum 150 kilos of nitrogen per hectare per year. These farmlets differ in the fact that one of them has plantain in it, and they still were growing very well and behaved about the same as the higher nitrogen level farmlets. We think because of the amount of clover and the legumes bind nitrogen out of the air, the rhizobia on their roots, and that is compensating for the nitrogen difference, we think. Farmlet 4 is a little bit of a conundrum for us still. It is a farmlet that does not receive chemical fertilizer going in. We were expecting it to produce less. You quite often see that these farmlets, that these type of farming systems reduce productivity by about 30% or so, and in the first year that didn't occur. What we have seen as a change in that farmlet is that the amount of clover has gone up consistently during the season, so it ended the season with on average the highest clover content, and that might have been just high enough to compensate for the lack of nitrogen. We see some changes in botanic composition due to the differences in nitrogen, so clovers increasing, but we do not really see a difference in productivity yet. What we are trying to achieve in this trial is that individual cows eat as much grass as they can. So we achieved for a large part of the season on these fully irrigated pastures that kept on growing even during the dry summer, a high pasture intake, and in this trial with cows 2nd to 6th lactation, we achieved around 17 kilo dry matter intake of pasture every day. What we then did is supplement with concentrate to requirement, so that the cows could produce what they were able to produce. All farmlets were able to achieve about a 17 kilogram at a pasture intake. Cow production in peak went to about the same peak for all farmlets, so the amount of concentrate fat ended up being about the same for all farmlets, and the cow production for each farmlet was about the same. So ultimately the only difference in production is caused by less cows per hectare in farmlet 4, where we are not expecting the productivity of pasture that we have seen. So the lower stocking rate causes a slightly lower milk production per hectare, not per cow so far. Cows have started to calve on our farm. As soon as there's sufficient cows to make balanced herds for the farmlets, the cows will start grazing the farmlets again. That moment is for us the start of the season, and we are aiming to get to about 24-2500 kilogram matter per hectare for these farmlets at the start of the season, so we have sufficient grass to start. What we do have in these farmlets is a fairly high stocking rate, up to 3.9 cows per hectare, and that means that our break-even point in growth of grass per hectare is high, so we will have somewhat of a feed gap initially until spring really is there and pasture growth is where it needs to be. So our main thing at the moment is make sure we have the right pasture cover, and when we have achieved that, and that matches up the way it looks now quite well with the moment we start grazing, from then on we have to have a very controlled spring rotation planning happening, and until we have reached break even. So that is our main focus at the moment. The trial is planned to be basically exactly the same as last year, and that's what you would want in a research trial. You want consistency, you want to only change the things that you want to be different, and that's what we are aiming for coming season. We briefly contemplated increasing the stocking rate for farmlet 4 because it grows more than the cows can eat basically. We have decided to not do that this year. We stay with a lower stocking rate because we have heard reports of other research farms that when you have a mixed species and no fertilizer nitrogen going in, over time there's still a fair chance that the production reduces. So no changes this year. There's only a practical change, and that is that for our pasture management, the break fences that we use, that's gonna be halter. We monitor behavior of our cows with halter collars, and this season we will also be using the halter system as a break fence and back fence system in the farmlet trial. So that is only a practical choice. We are not expecting that to make any difference for the trial itself. The first cows have started calving on our farm, and we anticipate that around the 25th of August we will make the first balanced groups of cows to go into the farmlets, and then the grazing of farmlets will start. So it's only a couple of weeks away.